Dave Hodges here, host of the Common Sense Show. We are the show that is freeing America one enslaved mind at a time. And to our friends around the world, welcome. International audience is growing, even though the views are down, artificially down. But our percentage of comments to total views is off the charts now. Do the math. I'm going to ask you to share this far and wide. And if you're going to want to follow us and you think we're doing is valuable, you're going to have to come back here on your own and not wait for notifications. We put something out just about every day, multiple items. So you can bet if you come back here, because a lot of you are telling me, I'm not getting notified. Okay, I understand that. So come on back. And I'm talking to our social media people. We may very well put this out on our podcast and radio network because this is such an important topic. Um, we thought the railroads were bad. They were. They were the robber barons. Just go steal land whenever you want. And they engaged in violence, financial improprieties, and they manipulated government with buy-offs, bribes, manipulation, and they were terrible. They were absolutely terrible. Well, the data centers make them look like angels. And there's not anyone who's hearing my voice right now. You're going to be impacted. They may not come and take your property directly, but a lot more eminent domain on their terms, giving you pennies on the dollar for what your property is really worth. I mean, you're paying property tax on one assessed value, and they're going to give you about a fifth of that. That's what we're finding out in Georgia. But there's even a bigger picture here. What's the natural progression of these AI data centers and their relationship to you? And there are some things that we can count on because they've been discussed in these globalist think tanks, like the Club of Rome, the World Economic Forum. And they publish these results. And then when we talk about them, they go, conspiracy theorists. Well, wait a minute, we're quoting from your documents. What this is really adding up to, and I'm saying this now as a Christian man, is that we're looking really at very strong satanic interests that the Bible warns us about. And before we leave, I'll give you a couple of scriptures that will justify what I'm telling you. And that if you're a Christian, you should be really concerned. If you're a human being and not part of this anti-human data center infrastructure, you should be concerned. Okay, we are brought to you by something that you need to listen to. If you have a decent sum of money, and I'm not talking millions or hundreds of thousands, but if you have a decent sum of money and you say, if I put it in the bank, I'm going to get destroyed because of inflation, and they can take it, Dodd-Frank 2010. And certainly my retirement's at risk, and that's a whole nother issue. But if you want to protect the value of your money, you got to diversify across all fronts. This is why I tell you, hey, gold and silver, good idea. Crypto, good idea because it's going to explode, but I don't think it's necessarily a permanent 100%. You take your profits, reinvest some of it, and move on to other things. It's called investment velocity. You really need to be engaged in that. But there's one thing that most people don't know about because the rich kept it secret, although the tenets of it are in IRS code 7702. Now, as we're transferring from one economic system to another, we're going from the fiat currency model into the digital model where you're going to lose total control over your assets. Total control. They can take your money and do anything they want or deny you your own money if they don't like something that you say. Social credit is upon us. There are certain things that we can count on now with the AI evolution that follow normal sociological processes that also come right into history. Now, it's kind of interesting here. Our sponsor fits right into the show. You're sitting there on money and go, what do I do with it? Well, there's an old saying, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. And what you do need to be doing is doing what they do. Now, they have made it illegal for people to go out and just say, this is how you do it, detail by detail, and walk you through. But individually, brokers can do this. And I can tell you about the opportunity. And that's because the rich got really rich from doing what I'm going to tell you. And it's perfectly legal. It can involve insurance and life care. It can involve IULs, annuities. It's a comprehensive financial plan that my friends at Ironhawk Financial have put together. And this isn't for everybody. And they'll tell you immediately when they talk to you, oh, okay, I'm not sure this is for you. You got to think about, and they'll mention something else. Or they'll say, I think this would be really good for you. Now, the process is fairly lengthy. You spend anywhere from 30 to 90 days because they dot all the I's, cross all the T's, and you should be glad they do that because they stay perfectly legal, above board, but most of all, they protect you. They've never lost a dime of client money, and they've never had a Better Business Bureau complaint. That's pretty telling. That's because they take care of you. Now, you can take what you've got and you put in, and you can transform that into an enormous return on income without tax. IRS code 7702. No games being played, perfectly legal because the rich got that written into the tax code. Now you can take advantage of it. You want to find out more? All you got to do is go to dhawk.com. That's dhawk.com. Fill out the information sheet. Marianne or Joe or one of the employees will call you and they'll tell you, hey, this is good for you, not good for you. Then they'll start walking you through the process. dhawk.com. And that fits right into where this is going because the rich are not going to destroy their own institutions that they're making money on, even though we're going through a transformation and a societal shift, unless we can stop it or modify it to where it's livable for the average person. They're not going to destroy their own financial money-making institutions. This is why this Ironhawk financial deal is so good. All right. When you look at what's coming, melding man and machine, they write about it. They call it singularity. And they're saying singularity will be here as early as 2030. Their words, not mine. I would never have guessed it would be that soon. And that's the melding of man and machine. And we've had that for a while. If you get dental implants, you're doing a little of that. If you get a pacemaker, you're definitely doing that. If you get a heart transplant, you're doing that. If you get an artificial hip, you're doing that. Those are good things. I mean, people can go on and live more productive, less painful lives because of this wonderful technology that we've evolved into. But nothing wrong with keeping the body going until a human is no longer a human. And that concept is called singularity. And what I see happening as I project this out, excuse me, we're returning to feudalism. You're going to have the lords and vassals run by the king, and then you're going to have about 95% of what's left of the population becoming serfs, where you have no property rights, that you work yourself to the bone or you do whatever they want you to do, but they benefit from it entirely. Let's walk through what we know. We're going to not have jobs. There'll be very, very few jobs. That's if these people get what they want. And this is what has the younger generation that's more tech savvy than people in my generation. They already see it. And they're already depressed by what's coming. And they know they can't stop it. And they're saying, why should I go to college or why should I go to medical school or law school and do all these things? Because I'm just going to be replaced by a robot and all my training will go to naught. This is really a frightening time for young people right now. Now, they don't need the workers, and the data centers are moving towards that. They will have all-knowing robots. By the way, just speaking about how powerful these robots are, did you see the news story that appeared one day on Fox and then it got suppressed? An AI entity, aka a robot built towards sentience, tried to escape the lab. That's right. And these robots are now teaching each other. Some of that's by design and some of it's by happenstance. And here's what's scary. We don't know how bad this problem is going to become. I'm going to highlight some things here that we do know, but we don't know how bad it's going to become because what the AI scientists that are quitting in protest are saying is this is moving in a direction that we're not controlling. That sent chills up and down my spine when I heard that story. And now you can't find it. Kind of interesting. The all-knowing robots losing the jobs. What will they do with you? Well, you have two schools of thought. One will be mass depopulation by whatever means necessary. I'm not necessarily in that camp, although some of the overseers of this group, Peter Thiel in particular, Sam Altman in particular, I, let's put it this way. They're the reason that locks are put on doors. Now, I don't trust them, but I don't think that's the way this is going. What has been talked about the most is something called universal basic income. But oh, gee, it's wonderful. They'll pay us just to lay in the sun and write poetry. And isn't it wonderful? We'll get to learn different languages. We'll have time to grow intellectually. Okay. How much universal basic income are they going to give you? See, what's never discussed with UBI for short is what will be the standard of living. And will there be preconditions placed on that? You bet your sweet Bippy it will be. Ooh, you remember that? The show Laugh-In? Universal basic income. And do you see these feudal lord overseers like Peter Thiel, Sam Altman? Do you see them being generous towards society? I played this clip yesterday when Peter Thiel was asked, should humanity have a right to exist? He couldn't answer the question. He wouldn't answer the question. So how long are they going to continue universal basic income? And what if when they decide we're tired of paying people to do nothing, what happens next? See, then that first possibility comes into serious view. And there are some things that you should be concerned about sociologically. One is the Deagle report produced by Stratford. They've since withdrawn it from public view, but many of us screenshot it and saved it. And it basically said that by 2030, the United States would have a population of 65 million. What? We're at 340 million as best we know because we didn't count all the people that came in. Uh, there's a little gap there, isn't there? Pretty serious gap. And then there was a guy who worked for Obama. He got his start, his name jumps out of my head here, but the concept is there. He has a website called America2050.org. And some of the things I'm going to tell you have been taken off the website. I saved the screenshots. But let's just say this. He talked about the fact that we got to become more resource conservative. And we can't have transportation costs. So what we need to do is have 11 megalopolises, which means metro centers piled on top of each other. And his map of America for 2050, but I think it could come sooner. And he proposed this to Obama as a means of environmental preservation, economic efficiency, and social control. He said that we'll live in these 11 large areas of 6 million people each. Oh, 11 times 6 is 66 million. What did Stratford say? 65 million. I'll just leave that thought with you. So, what happens when the universal basic income runs out? That's a problem. I'll leave that to your imagination right now because we don't know an answer. Can speculate, but we don't know. But I want to take you back to a movie. And a lot of times, Hollywood, whether they mean to or not, they engage in predictive programming. And there was one such movie called The Time Machine. H.G. Wells made into a 1960s movie, and it was about the Eloi and the Morlocks. Now, this man traveled 800,000 years into the future, and he found a society that was pretty bizarre. It had bifurcated. There had been a nuclear war and terrible evolution destruction. And there was basically what you'd call humans living above ground, but they were on universal basic income. They had their needs provided for them, but they were indifferent to each other's welfare. There was a scene in the movie where this girl, Weena, was being washed away by a current and no one moved to help her. And this man who traveled the future rescued her. They were totally indifferent. Now, the society that existed below, and they were in the old underground bunkers, presumably to try to save people from the Holocaust of nuclear war, they maintained this population, but they maintained it for very nefarious purposes. The movie said they maintained it for cannibalism. Now, here's how they got the people. They fattened them up, okay, like animals before the slaughter. And then they'd play the air raid sirens, and these people through the years had become automatically programmed. I would imagine through classical or respondent conditioning techniques talked about in behavioral psychology. And they would march to the centers. The doors were open. People would walk in, the doors would close, and the Morlocks would have their way with them. It was their food source. That was the movie. Now, I'm not suggesting the purveyors of AI are going to cannibalize, but I think metaphorically they will. They'll cannibalize your labor, your existence, your beliefs, everything. Total control. And this is where I really see this going. I think this is very instructive with the Morlocks and the Eloi. By the way, you're the Eloi, and Peter Thiel in this metaphor example would be a Morlock. This gets really dark about where this is going. There's a biblical phrase, and it says this: our battle is not against flesh and blood, but against principalities of darkness. I would call this pretty dark, even if it stays on the benign level. No, universal basic income forever. We're not meant to do that. Idleness is the devil's workshop, as the saying goes. We're meant to work, to produce, to create. We're given God-given talents we're supposed to develop and give those talents back to the world. That would all be absent. This is evil. And I do think that saying about principalities of darkness, I think it's very accurate. Here's some more we can look at. Matthew 6:24. No one can serve two masters. Either you'll hate one and love the other. You cannot serve God and money. No, the digital crowd, as I like to call them, the AI crowd, they're clearly serving money at your expense. They'll take your property, they'll pollute your environment, they'll pollute your drinking water, they'll cause terrible things to come happen to you. And if you're in Trinidad, Texas, and talk about how your water supply has been poisoned, the police will come and arrest you for felony panic spreading. And it's a felony. This one lady, we're actually going to do a short story on her. I'm going to see if I can't get her on the show to interview her. You can't even speak out against this, and the police will come and get you. Okay, another one from the Bible, another scripture that I think fits is Revelation 13:16 through 17. It also forced all people to receive a mark on their right hands and on their foreheads, so they could not buy or sell unless they had the mark. Peter Thiel's on the record saying we're going to tokenize everything, including the air you breathe. Well, putting a mark on you is a way of claiming you. And I will tell you this, if you allow that mark to go on you, eternal damnation is your future. It's not me saying this or hoping it happens. In fact, quite the opposite. It's me saying, I hope you have the discernment not to fall for the great deception, something we've spent a lot of time talking about, and you won't participate in the great falling away from the faith, and you'll refuse. Because whatever fate would await you in this world is minute and temporary compared to eternity. And I have no question that this is the beast system. No question. When people first said that, and I was hearing this 8, 10 years ago, and people were coming out, and what was it, 10,000 scientists wrote Obama a letter saying AI could be out of control and dangerous. I thought these people were overreacting. Where's the evidence? Well, the evidence now is in the construction of this new civilization that we're going into. I mean, don't you find it odd that we woke up suddenly and all of a sudden there are these AI data centers everywhere doing all these things, taking our water, jacking up our electricity rates, or if you're in Lake Tahoe, you don't have a power company starting in May of next year. Don't you find that odd that we just woke up in the middle of this nightmare? This is an orchestrated plot. This is not organic evolution of technology. This is planned. And something I had said earlier, and I think it bears repeating here, Trump was going to sign an executive order protecting rights of citizens against the data centers. He canceled the executive order signing. Peter Thiel, one of the men largely responsible for Trump being in the White House, said, no, you're not going to have that. You have no firewall protection. Your constitutional liberties with eminent domain have been eroded over time. And you see in Georgia, the Georgia Power Company, on behalf of the data centers, are taking people's land for pennies on the dollar, and elderly couples who can't afford to start over are impoverished. This is going to touch everybody, whether it's pollution or ultimately taking the mark or not taking the mark and suffering the consequences because you won't be able to buy or sell. This is serious territory. And I'm not sure that people are giving this the attention that it deserves. Although, if you go to YouTube as a cross section, we're beginning to see an increase in awareness on this. What is lacking is what every movement and anti-movement needs to have to be successful. And that's a sense of collective consciousness. The data center victims in Oregon are not connected to the data center victims in Georgia. And there needs to be a cross-pollination. One of the ways that we got our court case settled, well, partly because we had a future Supreme Court justice for Arizona, Clint Bullock, on our side and the Goldwater Institute, thanks to my friend Ernie Hancock. But one of the ways that we got this settled is we made it really clear to politicians who are on the fence, we're going to form coalitions with people in the county who have different views, but it's going to end up with people being removed from office. And that moved some people. Some people stepped off the fence and says, no, Dave, we're going to help you and your community protect their property rights. We're not going to allow McCain and his henchmen to steal your property without compensation for his international corridor and development project called the Central American Free Trade Agreement. Well, the same thing needs to happen here. Now, fortunately, I was in a smaller environment that I had more control over. This is well, it's an international issue, but for our purposes here, it's a national issue. And the people in Oregon need to align with the people in Arizona, who need to align with the people in Georgia. And we need to come together on this, and we need to say no. And as the Declaration of Independence says, when the government stops serving the needs of the people need to stop supporting the government. That doesn't mean a violent revolution, but it does mean a change in support. And I had talked about this 2 days ago. What options do you have available to you with regard to what this government's doing with the war and wrecking our economy, and actually the global economy, which I think is deliberate? I didn't used to think that, but I do now, because what will take its place? When the dollar collapses, the digital dollar comes in. They've already aligned that in the big, beautiful bill through stablecoin, digital currency. You don't have to be a mental giant to see what's coming. You just have to be aware and do a little reading. Well, the digital age and data centers are tied together, and you're going to be tightly controlled. And let me connect another dot. The flock systems are everywhere. They can even monitor your communications now. They can hear what you're saying in the car. They can isolate your car. You have no freedom. Do you know what Colorado's doing now? This is really interesting. This has now been legislated that they have these flock systems that follow you. And let's say you go from point A to point B. Okay, so we'll drive from, let's say, Castle Rock, Colorado, up I-25, take the Boulder Turnpike into Boulder. And there'll be flock cameras all the way. Now, if you start from your origination point to your destination point, and if your time exceeds what the speed limit was, you get a ticket. How do you like that? And here's how bad AI is getting. If your bumper is 1 inch into the intersection as measured by that flock surveillance camera, you get a ticket. There's no judge, there's no cop to talk to. There's no one to say I had to pull a little forward because I was afraid of the guy rushing up on my rear end. And if you're going through the intersection and your rear bumper doesn't totally clear the intersection before the light turns red, automatic ticket. But wait a minute. Some kid ran out into the street after a ball, and I slowed down so I could safely avoid that person. That doesn't matter. You get the ticket. This is an inhumane, systemic situation we're being thrown into. And when people first hear this, they go, oh, this is overwhelming. And I don't believe all this. And they wouldn't do that to us. Stay tuned. Because when you start feeling the pain of the transition of one society to another, and I quoted Zbigniew Brzezinski yesterday in his book, Between Two Ages, where he said, when you transition between different kinds of civilizations, you have a generation of hell, quote unquote. When the pain becomes great enough, you'll come back to this and you'll say, how did he know? Because I read the books. I read Brzezinski. I read him in 1982 and he wrote the book in 1970, and it shaped my view of everything. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to wake up. We have to lock arms as citizens and stand up to this tyranny. We need to stand up to the tyranny of the war that's wrecking our economy. Douglas McGregor, colonel and advisor to the Pentagon, the White House, and so forth, he's retired now, but he said something really interesting. He gave you the same time frames I mentioned about 3 weeks ago. We have, right now, to me, was the drop dead date to get out. And we're not getting out. And we're going to start feeling these deleterious effects on our economy. We could have roving blackouts. We're going to have gas rationing if you can get it at all. Yeah, and meanwhile, we got plenty of energy for the data centers, but that's a separate issue. But we're going to start really feeling the pain. And when we start feeling the pain, and if you can get gas and you're paying $10 a gallon, then see all this other stuff we're talking about comes into play because it's one systemic movement. It's the elite building a system of feudalism. They're not going to call it that. Pat Wood calls it the technotronic era. I agree with that term. But you are going to be a serf on the feudal manor, and you won't own your own manor. You won't own your own life. And because of AI, you don't own your own future. And the data centers are not just the symbolic representation of this movement, they're the real enforcement agent, because to all the data they need to surveil and control, they got to watch you. And to quote an old song from the Police, every move you make, every breath you take, and I'll change the words a little bit, they'll be watching you. They'll be watching you so they can control you. If you think they're on your side, just ask the people in Oregon and Georgia how much they're on their side.